Sector 1664. Directed Energy Programs for Ballistic and Hypersonic Missile Defense. Sector 1665. Guam Integrated Air and Missile Defense System. Sector 1666. Missile Defense Radar in Hawaii. Sector 1667. Certification required for Russia and China to tour certain missile defense sites. Sector 1668. Next Generation Interceptors for Missile Defense of the United States Homeland. Sector 1669. Iron Dome Short-Range Rocket Defense System and Israeli Cooperative Missile Defense Program co-development and co-production. Sector 1670. Update of study on discrimination capabilities of the ballistic missile defense system. Sector 1671. Semi-annual updates on meetings held by the Missile Defense Executive Board. Sector 1672. Matters regarding Integrated Deterrence Review. Sector 1673. Semi-annual notifications regarding missile defense tests and costs. Sector 1674. Report on Senior Leadership of Missile Defense Agency. Sector 1675. Independent study of roles and responsibilities of Department of Defense components relating to missile defense. Subtitle E Other Matters Sector 1681. Cooperative Threat Reduction Funds. Sector 1682. Modification to Estimate of Damages from Federal Communications Commission Order 20-48. Sector 1683. Establishment of office, organizational structure, and authorities to address unidentified aerial phenomena. Sector 1684. Determination on certain activities with unusually hazardous risks. Sector 1685. Study by Public Interest Declassification Board relating to certain tests in the Marshall Islands. Sector 1686. Protection of Major Range and Test Facility Base. Sector 1687. Congressional Commission on the Strategic Posture of the United States. Subtitle A Space Activities Sec. 1601. National Security Space Launch Program. A. Disclosure of National Security Space Launch Program Contract Pricing Terms. 1. In general, Chapter 135 of Title 10, United States Code, is amended by inserting after Section 2276 the following new Section 2277, Sec. (2277) Disclosure of National Security Space Launch Program Contract Pricing Terms. A. In general, with respect to any contract awarded by the Secretary of the Air Force for the launch of a national security payload under the National Security Space Launch Program, not later than 30 days after entering into such a contract, the Secretary shall submit to the Congressional Defense Committees a description of the pricing terms of the contract. For those contracts that include the launch of assets of the National Reconnaissance Office, the Secretary shall also submit the pricing terms to the Congressional Intelligence Committees, as defined by Section 3 of the National Security Act of 1947. 50 U.S.C. 3003. B. Competitively sensitive trade secret data. The Congressional Defense Committees and the Congressional Intelligence Committees shall 1. Treat a description of pricing terms submitted under subsection A as competitively sensitive trade secret data, and 2. Use the description solely for committee purposes, subject to appropriate restrictions to maintain the confidentiality of the description. C. Rule of construction for purposes of Section 1905 of Title 18. A disclosure of contract pricing terms under subsection A shall be construed as a disclosure authorized by law. 2. Conforming amendment. The table of sections at the beginning of such chapter is amended by inserting after the item relating to Section 2276 the following new item: 2277. Disclosure of National Security Space Launch Program Contract Pricing Terms. B. Policy. with respect to entering into contracts for launch services during the period beginning on the date of the enactment of this Act and ending September 30, 2024, it shall be the policy of the Department of Defense and the National Reconnaissance Office to 1. Use the National Security Space Launch Program to the extent practical to procure launch services only from launch service providers that can meet federal requirements with respect to delivering required payloads to reference orbits covered under the requirements of Phase 2, and 2. Maximize continuous competition for launch services as the Space Force initiates planning for Phase 3, specifically for those technology areas that are unique to existing and emerging national security requirements. C. Notification. If the Secretary of Defense or the Director of the National Reconnaissance Office determines that a program requiring launch services that could be met using Phase 2 contracts will instead use an alternative launch procurement approach, not later than 7 days after the date of such determination, the Secretary of Defense or, as appropriate, the Director of National Intelligence, shall submit to the appropriate congressional committees 1. A notification of such determination, 2. A certification that the alternative launch procurement approach is in the national security interest of the United States, and 3. An outline of the cost analysis and any other rationale for such determination. D. Report. 1. Requirement. Not later than 90 days after the date of the enactment of this Act, the Secretary of Defense, in coordination with the Chief of Space Operations and the Director of the Space Development Agency, and in consultation with the Director of National Intelligence, including with respect to the views of the Director of the National Reconnaissance Office, shall submit to the appropriate congressional committees a report on the emerging launch requirements in the areas of space access, mobility, and logistics that will not be met by Phase 2 capabilities. 2 elements. The report under paragraph 1 shall include the following: A. An examination of potential benefits of competing one or more launches that are outside of Phase 2 capabilities, focused on accelerating the rapid development and on-orbit deployment of enabling and transformational technologies required to address any emerging requirements, including with respect to I. Delivery of in-space transportation, logistics, and on-orbit servicing capabilities to enhance the persistence, sensitivity, and resiliency of national security space missions in a contested space environment. 2.